Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones. This is Season 14, Episode 17. Today I'm speaking with Mandy Naglich, who is a food and beverage journalist, beer educator, Advanced Cicerone, a ROXA certified taster, WSET Level 1 Spirits and National Homebrew Competition Gold Medalist. Mandy shares her expertise on multiple platforms, helping her followers understand and enjoy the food and drinks they consume. I'm speaking with Mandy about her work and her book, How to Taste, a guide to discovering flavor and savoring life. That book came out last year to much acclaim. I'm going to take you now to my conversation with Mandy Naglich. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. Today, I'm very happy to be speaking with Mandy Naglich, who is a certified taster, drinks educator, and writer of the book, How to Taste. Mandy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
For our listeners who are new to you, can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and where you live now?
Yeah, I was born in Texas, but then moved to just north of Philadelphia for until I was in college when I went back to Texas, Fort Worth, go Frogs, if there's any TCU fans out there. And now I've been in New York City. It will be 10 years at the end of next month. So, a little south, a little northeast, back and forth, but I feel like I have a good mix of both.
Yeah, my mom's side of the family, a lot of my people are back in Texas. I lived in Texas. I lived in Fort Worth for a couple of years in Dallas, Fort Worth area.
Oh, wow. One of my first big, intense restaurant shops was that Lonesome Dove in Fort Worth, the Tim Love Steakhouse there. So that's definitely where I tasted my first kangaroo, my first snake, all kinds of things like that in Fort Worth. So special place to me.
I had alligator there.
There you go. I think it's so great because Texas is not what you'd really expect for, some of those more exotic game meats. People are pretty meat and potatoes around where I was. And so, yeah, I love that he's always doing those interesting proteins. It was a great first experience at a more intense restaurant.
I had a great time in Fort Worth. I really loved, there were some great bars there I used to go to, and then some great restaurants and just really great places to visit. I really had a really lovely time there. I used to go to Deep Ellum a lot back in the day. Oh my God, it was so much fun. Yeah, good place.
Definitely.
Now you have given an extensive background as a certified taster and advanced. Is it Cicerone?
Yeah, Cicerone. It's an invention of someone from the U.S. So just a nice English U.S. Accent, I guess, with it.
Okay. And how do you transition from the world of beer to becoming a comprehensive taste expert across various food and beverage categories? And can you talk a little bit about your background with beer?
Yeah, so in 2016, I won a gold medal at the National Homebrew Competition, which is about, I think at the time it was over 5,000 entries. So it was a really exciting time for me. It was my first competition and no one had ever heard of me. So when this woman came and won out of nowhere, I kind of got some media attention. And that's when I started writing a column for VinePair. And from there, I picked up my studies to become first a Cicerone, then an Advanced Cicerone. And I was on my way to studying to be a master Cicerone, which people can think of as that master sommelier. A lot of people have seen the movie Somm.
Yeah.
So, being able to taste 116 beer styles blind, knowing the history of every beer style, knowing all the stats, things like that. And to study for Master Cicerone, I had to take this tasting course where we would taste individual compounds. For example, the flavor of artificial banana is isoamyl acetate. So knowing how to taste that blind, describe it. And I got obsessed with that chemistry of flavor. I just never had it broken down for me before, that individual compounds. The reason an apple tastes like an apple is a compound called ethyl hexanoate. I just thought that was so amazing that all these compounds are spread throughout different foods and beverages, that rather than pursuing getting that last certification of Cicerone, I kind of opened up what I covered and what I was interested in to all food, and really that flavor chemistry and the way we can develop our senses to experience life in a more deep, colorful, tasty way.
5,000 applicants. That's a lot. How did it feel to win?
I was absolutely shocked. It was one of those experiences. I was at the table at the award ceremony and they announced bronze, and I was like, oh, well then I obviously didn't win. So I started talking to the people next to me and they announced my name and someone said, oh, did they just say your name? And I was like, no, I don't think so. And then I turned around and my name was on the screen for winning gold, which was, yeah, I was totally unexpected. I thought if anything, I'll come, grab a third place. So really exciting. And, I had never entered a competition before. I'd heard people say my homebrew was very good, but it's very different with a judging panel rather than just your friends telling you your beer is good.
Is it really hard to do this? It seems like to me it would be very difficult, I think, over a period of time, because I think it seems like it would get confusing after a certain point because you're trying to remember what you tasted, or is that not hard? Is that easy for you?
As far as brewing or as far
Ju-
as judge?
Just like a competition, yeah.
Yeah, so I was really hooked on trying to make my homebrew beer taste like it came from like a commercial brewery out of the bottle. So I think as far as entering the competition to brew what in my idea was like a perfect saison, it's really brewing, tasting it, seeing how you would adjust it, things like the temperature of your fermentation or the temperature of the boil or how long it is when you're adding hops, aspects like that, until I really felt like I had nailed a beer that could just be coming out of any brewery. And that's what I entered.
Now, your book, How to Taste, that you released last year, delves deeply into the science and art of taste, which I find very fascinating. I'm kind of a biology nerd, so I think this is really amazing. Can you discuss the challenges you faced in translating complex scientific concepts into accessible and engaging content for a general audience?
Yeah, I've had a lot of practice. I do have this Instagram account called Drinks with Mandy where I really delve into the science of flavor of all kinds of drinks, tea, whiskey, beer. And that platform has helped me translate, chemical ideas or, like I said, those chemical compounds into something that general audiences want to understand. So when I came to reporting the book, I knew when I was speaking to these scientists and researchers that I would be breaking it down in a similar way that anyone who's reading this book, if the last time they had science was in high school, would still be able to understand what I was talking about and find the concepts interesting and exciting rather than, kind of dull and hard to understand. So I think just that practice over time of understanding where people get lost when you're talking about chemistry and making sure you don't hit any of those road bumps just takes some practice.
I just find it fascinating to me, the whole thing about taste, because we live in a weird time now because you went to a bar, you're like, give me a beer or give me a whiskey, or you went to a diner and you're like, give me a coffee. And now there's a lot of like different types of coffee. People are kind of almost snobbish about it, very territorial about their coffee preferences, their whiskey preferences. Is almost gets to be a point of like contention with people. And then also just wine. We're not going to go into wine. Is it kind of a weird time now? Like people are very brand conscious and very much like very territorial about their preferences.
I think it's a really exciting time because no matter what kind of flavor aspects you enjoy, you can find that within your chosen medium, right? So, like you said, coffee. I actually start the book at the World Champion Coffee Cup Tasters Competition, which is people speed smelling and tasting coffee to identify the correct coffee as fast as possible, right? So, this guy, I've followed this guy from Ireland. He ends up winning the Cup Tasters Championship, but you can really focus if you like a more sweet, round vanilla coffee. There's a coffee out there for you that's not going to have that bitter edge. They're going to make it specifically to have those little more buttery, protein forward flavors. Whereas if you like that big punch of bitterness, that really roasty, almost ash quality to a coffee, that's going to be out there for you too. Whereas before, maybe, a decade ago, you either liked the flavor of coffee or you didn't. And now you can find the coffee that's right for you, especially if you're going to focus on tasting it, enjoying it. And I think the hardest thing is just kind of coming up with understanding what you do enjoy. You have to taste a lot of things you don't love to find that one thing that really clicks for you. And you're like, now I like coffee and this is the kind of coffee I like.
How about you? Do you like if people say what their favorite whiskey or something is, do you kind of look at them like, oh, like, is that kind of a thing? Like you're like I like Bushmills, and like sometimes people are like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. That's really pedestrian, and I'm like, I like what
Bushmills
I
is
like.
so great. They print it on money. Come on. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
the money in Ireland. So, I mean, no, I think there's so much that goes into what we consider flavor, right? It's not just the actual chemicals hitting our tongue and nose. It's nostalgia. It's maybe your first experience with a certain category. So I think I never turn up my nose. Actually, one of my favorite parts of the book is I talk to a bunch of master somms, a bunch of whiskey tasters, professional whiskey distillers, and cheesemakers, everyone, and got their favorite bottom shelf product,
Yeah.
which for whiskey was Evan Williams White Label. Multiple professional whiskey tasters and distillers recommended that. All the master somms said their favorite boxed wine was Franzia Zinfandel. So hot tip up there, out there if you need a boxed
Nice.
wine. But I
Very
think
nice.
when you get to a true expertise and I've tasted so many things, I think it's very easy for me in anything for someone to say, I don't want to spend more than X. What's your favorite? And I think that's just appreciating a category, completely having a passion and appreciation for it. Being snobbish is never going to get us anywhere. And at a certain point, no matter how much money you're investing in something, the flavor is not changing a lot. It's more perception, packaging, maybe rarity and things like that. So definitely not. If Bushmills is your whiskey, I think that's awesome.
How did you at what point did you say, I really want to write how to taste? Like, where did you come to that point in your life, and how did you hope it would impact people as their relationship to food and drink?
My favorite thing is definitely being in person, teaching people, interacting, seeing, live on people's faces, their recognition or understanding of flavor, or finally being able to pick out a specific note. So before the pandemic, I was teaching a lot of blind tasting classes, doing a lot of in-person education, which is, like I said, my favorite thing. Obviously, 2020 hit and no one wants to get in a room together and sniff and taste and lick and do all those different things. So
Yeah.
I really took a lot of my knowledge and my curriculum from some of those classes and turned it into a proposal and then widened it. I was lucky enough to get to talk to, I think it was like 118 experts for the book. And during that time, we all
Wow.
happened to have a little bit more free time. So some of those, I talked to a sake samurai, which there are fewer than 20 in the world, and he happened to have some free time. So it ended up kind of a bunch of things, now we're far enough away from that time, I think, that we can see the silver linings. And I had time to sit down and write. All of these people had time to talk with me. And yeah, it came out. It took a little longer to print than normal because of the pandemic. So I guess
Yeah.
not a silver lining, but yeah, it came out last year. And I think, yeah, I'm so happy. I think I would still just be teaching in-person classes and not have this resource for a lot of people if it wasn't for that time.
Now I want to ask also, do you oh, sorry, I'm going to edit this part out. How do you balance the scientific aspects of taste with making the book accessible to the general audience? I think we
Yeah.
just asked that, didn't we? I'm sorry. Let's not do that one. I
Okay.
think I just duplicated that question. Sorry. All right. Whew. Okay. You introduce a wide range of taste experts in the book. How did you select these? We kind of talked about that, didn't we, though, just now? Yeah.
I was
Let's
gonna
just
say
get rid of that one too.
I can do whatever
No,
you need. No,
no,
no
I just
pressure.
realized. Yeah, no, sorry, I'll self edit that out. Okay. One, two, three. Could you elaborate on the process of developing the tasting exercises and how readers can effectively implement them at home?
Yeah, definitely. I think people, when you envision, learning how to taste, they envision like this quiet room and like the back of a wine cellar, and you have to pay a certain amount for a ticket and things like that. But when you talk to some of the scientists and researchers and the people who are like developing flavor for things like our favorite sodas or, packaged crackers, the way that you keep your senses up are really simple and straightforward. So I wanted to show people just doing something like sniffing every spice in your cabinet a few times a week, or concentrating when you order a new drink out at a restaurant on what is the first flavor you notice, trying to guess what might be in your glass, are really great ways to build those connections within your brain. So rather than thinking of it like a pop quiz or thinking of it like flashcards, you can really just put a little more focus into the things you do in your everyday life to um, expand your palate and the way that you think about flavor. So those are all outlined in the back of chapter 5, and they're just little ways, even fun ways. One of them is about you go out to dinner with someone and you each order each other a drink and have the other person try to guess what's in your glass. And that's a really great way to kind of work those sensory skills. When you're smelling something, you're tasting it, you're trying to put your finger on exactly what is hitting your palate. And also really fun just to see what someone else orders you. You might get something that you would never naturally get yourself. So I think little exercises like that I put together with input from all of those experts to make sure they will actually make you a better taster, and it's not going to, cost you too much or take too much out of your day, to just slowly expand these skills.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I want to do that. That sounds cool. How do you see the concept of flavor memory evolving and its potential impact on future culinary experiences?
Yeah, I think as, the appreciation for more artisan foods over the last 5 to 10 years has really increased, right? Everyone wants their special sourdough breads. They expect more from the tea program at a restaurant. You can't just have a green and a black tea.
Right.
Um, Chefs and people who are making those menus and sourcing those things are going to want to have more and more original flavors and things that are unexpected or exciting to people. So they're delving down into different cultures, different regions that we might not have heard of before or know much about, to find these new flavors and bring them into new, um I guess concepts could be the right word, into new places they haven't been before, right? So we're seeing a lot of things like yuzu has been really popular over the last few years,
Oh
which
my
is
God, it's
kind of
everywhere.
right. It's like a little bit lemon, a little bit lime, but more with an herbal kind of edge to it. And people, 5 years ago probably haven't tasted yuzu. Now there's yuzu sodas, there's yuzu in every cocktail, there's yuzu in the tea bags with green tea, there's, yuzu ice creams and things like that. So I think we'll notice things that once used to be kind of exotic or people didn't understand becoming more mainstream. And as our palates as a society and a globe expand more, we'll be more accepting and hopefully more adventurous. The whole point of the book, I really just want people to feel comfortable being adventurous, know that every flavor is just, some chemical compounds. And if you didn't like it, it'll be off your palate pretty quick and you can go try something new. I think there's a lot of fear around trying new things, and I even talked to some psychologists and things about that, because I think the whole point is to really experience life and experience the different places you visit or the people you're with. Taste and smell are just a huge part of that.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I think people are willing to try things new and they at least even talk about it. We've seen a lot of food shows where they will discuss trying something that might be kind of weird for some people. I know that durian has been a conversational topic for the last decade,
Mhm.
and that gets discussed quite a bit. And you see durian in supermarkets now where you wouldn't have seen it before. And people at least are becoming, I think, more tolerant of what other people may like that they may not like. So that's something I want to ask. The book explores a connection between taste and other senses. Can you discuss how these interactions influence our overall perception of flavor?
Yeah, definitely. I think a really fun one that people don't maybe notice right away or think about is the connection between taste and what we're hearing. Our
Oh, wow.
taste signals from the back of our tongue actually run on a nerve called the chorda tympani through our inner ear and then to the brain to tell us what we're tasting. And that inner ear, if you're listening to a rock concert or something really loud, it'll be jostling. But also if you're listening to something like smooth jazz music or a classical song or something gentle in the background or just the voice of someone you really enjoy, it's kind of jostling that nerve a different way. And what research has found is things like listening to jazz while you're eating, actually people rate the exact same dish as more pleasurable, they enjoy it more. Things like loud rap music was one of the things I tested, and it made people less likely to try something new. So there's all these different connections kind of how that sound is affecting what you're tasting, and even to the point where they would play certain songs for people, quote unquote sour music, which is quite pitchy, and they would have those people mix lemonade, and people who had listened to sour music would make more sour lemonade, and people who had listened to quote unquote sweet music, which has much longer notes, they don't jump registered as much, would make sweeter lemonade. So it's like there's these signals constantly coming to us, making us decide what we crave, what we're tasting in that moment, and it's something that we don't even necessarily consciously notice. So I go through all five senses that way, and break them down in the book. And yeah, everything you're feeling, seeing, smelling, it's all coming together to create the sensation of flavor. It's definitely not all based on your tongue.
What role do you think taste plays in fostering a deeper connection to food and the environment?
Yeah, I think something we don't realize, like I was just talking about, taste and smell are so interconnected. And one of the reasons, people say that they have a hard time waking up in the morning, but then for some reason when they're on vacation, they're able to just like hop out of bed and, go do things. And it's not just that you're not working. It's also that all of your sensory inputs around you and your environment are totally different. So, when you smell the same detergent on your bed every night, this is the place I go to sleep. This is familiar to me. When I wake up, I know what to expect in the morning. But when you're in a hotel room or somewhere that might have different, a different environment, you're in a different country, you don't smell their normal smells and things like that. Your body's a little bit more on high alert, and you're constantly making connections to those smells around you, to what you're experiencing, and creating memories. That's why you might have a deeper memory of going on a trip somewhere, or, a really special event and how it smelled, than you would just like your day to day, what did you have for lunch last Wednesday kind of thing, because you're so much more aware of your surroundings. Your body and your inner systems are constantly picking up on these new scents and trying to ground you in that place. So I think enhancing that and leaning into that even more is a really great way to create new memories. We create really deep memories around smell. It's basically the super highway to our emotions as far as the way our nerves and our brain are set up. So being more conscious of the place that you are and taking in those smells, trying to identify them, or noticing just how, the air in a different city smells different, or a different forest, or things like that, is what your brain is naturally doing. And it's a great way for you to create new memories.
I'm really lucky. I live in an area that's a real melting pot. So I have food from all over the world where I'm at, just within easy reach.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes I talk to other people a lot about food and what they eat and our different flavor profiles. And I'm becoming more and more aware. I think we're becoming, as a country, more and more aware. Like, the word umami gets thrown around a lot, and it wasn't really thrown around a lot, maybe more than 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think that the science of taste enhances our appreciation for cultural and regional cuisines, and we kind of do we become more open-minded as we explore and learn to taste new things?
Definitely. And I think it's also a way to communicate across cultures that we don't always realize. There's a really fun point in the book. I'm talking to a coffee expert, and now I can't think of the word he was using. Shoot. But one of the coffee experts said she was like constantly explaining in her class, like, this coffee tastes like blueberry, blueberry, blueberry. And someone from Africa used a different word for it. I
Yeah.
can't remember at the moment. And then they came to realize, they looked up, she Googled it. So she's like, what is he talking about? And it's the exact same berry, just two different names. So
Oh,
I think kind
wow.
of speaking through, like speaking through our experiences and relating to culture and saying, oh, we're saying the exact same thing, we just have two different words for it, is like such a nice way to connect. And I really love some of the cultural implications of things like cinnamon. In American culture, we think of cinnamon, you smell it and you think bakery case, cinnamon roll, frosting, lots of sugar. But most other cultures, if we're looking at Asian cultures and Indian food, cinnamon is savory, and they're thinking of curries and things like that. Or even in Mexico, you're thinking of things like moles and like a savory course. So I think talking about the way that we understand what we taste, and seeing how other cultures experience it, when you're conscious of those things and thinking about it, it can really help you kind of bridge cultures, create conversation, and just it's a great time to kind of tell each other about what you appreciate, what your culture, talking about the person who grew up eating curries with cinnamon and how their mom used to make it and things like that. And then we have our cinnamon Christmas cookies and things like that. I think it's a really nice way to go a little deeper than small talk when you're trying to connect with someone from a different background.
In a world increasingly focused on convenience, we become, we want everything fast, we want it now. A lot of times, much of the food we eat is overly saturated with salt and other flavoring agents and chemicals. How can you encourage people to slow down and truly savor the flavors of the food and drink they consume?
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole method lined out. I think it's chapter 4 in the book, called the tasting method. And it takes you through 3 different ways to sniff and 3 different ways to taste everything you eat and drink. And you can do the whole thing in a minute. It's very quick. But I think having that focus of first trying to smell for like your top notes, there's a way to kind of smell using the back of your nose by opening your mouth a little bit and exhaling out your nose after you take an inhale. Just those little kind of techniques for every time you try something new, you're just going to do these quick 3 smells and quick 3 tastes. I think immediately starts making those brain connections, right? When you're connecting things like texture, we have a taste called the mouthfeel taste. So is it creamy? Is it crunchy? How heavy does this wine feel on my tongue compared to other wines? Or this cheese has, those little tyrosine crystals with the crunch in them. And just starting to create those connections. The next time you even take a whiff, a smell of that Gouda that had the crunchy things, you'll smell it and say, oh, I bet this will have that crunchy texture. And you'll start making these connections. And what I kind of refer to in the book as like your mental flavor library of all these experiences you've had, so you can make those connections quickly and say, oh, I had Gouda in this context, and now, you know, I'm in a different part of the world or at a different restaurant and they're serving it in a different context, and just kind of having a more, like I like to say, like a deeper appreciation for everything you're eating and the people who are preparing it for you.
The world of alcohol has, kind of exploded with all the different flavors and the exciting different things we can try now. People even are talking more about things like gin. Gin is no longer a monolith. It's something that, everybody, like I'm even considering making my own gin. We're at a point now, but that's the thing. For you, as somebody who you really discuss and think about the science of taste and also have tried so many different types of alcohols, what's exciting for you right now? What are you really jazzed about? What are you really enjoying right now?
That's a great question. Something that I feel pretty strongly about in, like, at least the cocktail kind of sector right now, there's a lot of batching of cocktails going on at restaurants and bars, which they have really cool flavors, right? And the reason they're batching them is because they have techniques that take a long time, like, for example, clarifying drinks or infusing
Yeah.
them. So they can't do all of that live. You can't clarify a single cocktail, you know, right in front of someone. So they're doing them in the big batches. But the bars that I love and the bartenders I appreciate, and especially bar owners and beverage directors, are the ones who are still teaching all of their bartenders how these things are done, what it tastes like. So when a customer says, oh, I see this cocktail, like, what is it? They don't just know it's batch bottle number 4 that you're pouring and, you know, putting a garnish on. I think it's really important to appreciate the techniques, but also understand the flavors and be able to answer those questions that a customer has when they walk in. The things that I find most exciting now are people who understand our cocktail menu is spread out, you know, or laid out to say, these are the more bitter balanced drinks. These are more balanced. These are more sweet balanced. These are more sour balanced, and really listening to someone's request and being able to have a match for them flavor wise. I think people who really understand flavor educate their bartenders on it. I think that's super exciting. It doesn't always have to be like, oh, I'm getting a martini or an old fashioned either. I do love the new, like, updated techniques, but I think starting with that base education of what is something going to taste like. And if someone tells me I usually like an old fashioned, what does that actually mean, right? That's a cocktail that's balanced a little bit more sweet. It's going to have that whiskey vanilla note to it. It's having the vermouth, you know, those kind of things, and being able to put that together and show someone a new drink and expand their palate without giving them something they don't like.
I like a lot of different liqueurs. Like I like Strega. I like Sambuca. I like a lot of different types of things. What are some of the liqueurs that you enjoy that you'd love to kind of educate people on and tell them about that people aren't really aware of? Is there anything out there that you really jazzed about right now?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like I'm gonna sound cliche because we were just talking about this, but there's a great yuzu liqueur. I can picture the bottle in my head, but I don't know the name of it. But it's on my bar that I think is really fun to add to some tiki drinks, like
Mm,
just as a different kind of layer in there. You know, tiki drinks can be quite lime forward in their
yes.
citrus use, and I think adding a little note of yuzu is really nice. Kind of on that uh, same bend is there's an orgeat liqueur now.
Hmm.
So instead of just making, you know, your orgeat and keeping it in the fridge, when it has the alcohol in it, it can also sit on your bar and you get that nice almond marzipan note that I think is great. Just a little bit, quarter ounce in a lot of different cocktails. I think it's a nice way, adding some sweetness, vanilla, those marzipan notes, but with something that's very shelf stable and, yeah, has a
That
little
sounds
booze in it too.
that sounds wonderful. I love
Yeah.
marzipan, and thank you for telling me how to pronounce that word. I've always wondered how to pronounce it. I've been pronouncing it wrong for like 50 years.
That's kind of like Moet in Shandon too. People want to say
Yeah.
Moet because it seems like they should, but it's, you know, however you want to say it, people will know what you're talking about.
Do you have a least favorite alcohol? There's something that really puts your teeth on edge?
Uh, I don't really have a least favorite anything. I think things that are out of balance, anytime that someone's using something super high proof and it really tastes like ethanol, I don't love. But
Not
no,
even Fireball?
I actually love Fireball. I have no problem
Really?
with Fireball. I have no problem with flavored whiskeys like the Screwball peanut butter whiskey. I'm all for it.
I've not had that.
So
My son likes it. I haven't really tried
yeah,
it yet, but I want to give that a shot.
yeah.
All right. Now I want to ask you, as somebody who is scientifically thinking about flavor and stuff, do you ever watch the TV? Oh, actually, it's a YouTube show. I guess I really can't say it's TV. It's called Hot Ones. Have you ever watched that?
I've seen clips of it. They like will come up on Instagram and things, but I've never watched like an episode beginning to end.
So what's going on there with people? Because it's funny, you get such different reactions with people, and they're all trying the same hot sauce, and their tongue. It's funny the differences because some people act like they're dying, some people act like it's no big deal.
Right.
What's going on there with flavor and like how it affects people?
So a lot of it comes down to your genetics. Especially there's a status called super taster that people think means, oh, you'd be a great chef or a great somm or things like that. But super taster really just means you can taste bitterness more deeply. There's a compound that some people can't taste at all. They're the non-tasters. Some people can taste it sometimes, but not in like very small quantities. They're the tasters. And then the super tasters just have a really intense reaction to these bitter compounds. They also tend to have more taste buds. And the way our taste buds work is you can think of a taste bud as like a globe, and then around the globe is a net. And that net is all of our feeling nerves. So the more taste buds you have, the more of those feeling nerves you have. And capsaicin is going to be attacking those nerves that have feelings. So if you have a ton of taste buds, you are already a deep taster that tastes things really intensely. That capsaicin hitting your tongue, it's going to feel like it's hitting you 500 times if you have 500 times more taste buds, right? So a lot of
Right.
it's genetics. I also will say they are actors, a lot of them. So I think, what's going to be the better YouTube clip comes in a little bit, but we definitely see people who, if you're a really non-taster at one end of that spectrum, spice isn't going to affect you as much. They look for foods that are really, really crunchy and have a lot of texture because they aren't tasting a lot. They have those fewer taste buds and things like that. So yeah, a hot sauce, they'll need 10 times the hot sauce that someone on the super taster spectrum would need to like start sweating. So a lot of it comes down to your genes. In the book, I talk about all the different genes that affect what we taste. For example, 30% of people are totally blind to the aroma of violet. So back to liqueur. Creme de violet is like an essential ingredient in a cocktail called an aviation. And 30% of people will think that cocktail just smells like gin. They won't smell the violet at all. The
Wow.
compounds beta-ionone is just a really high, what we call specific anosmia for a lot of people. There's one gene tied to it. If that gene is turned off for you, you're not going to smell it at all.
Interesting. That's
Mm-hmm.
fast. See, this whole thing is so fascinating. Now, when you travel, do you have any favorite bars that you like to go to? Like, say, for the Bay Area, is there any
Mm-hmm.
favorite bars you like to go to in the Bay Area when you're here?
Okay, well, I have two answers to the question. First of all, Bay Area, I feel like you have to send everyone to the Buena Vista because they
Of
have to have
course.
their Irish coffee. But my favorite thing when I travel, honestly, within the US is harder, but internationally, I always make sure to go to a McDonald's no matter what and have like whatever their fun McFlurry is. Like in Belgium, it's stroopwafel, and then whatever kind of signature burger. Like when I was in New Zealand, they had a beet, hard-boiled egg, I forget, and there was some kind of cheese on that's like their signature, what they would consider a Big Mac, like their
Oh,
favorite
wow. I didn't know that.
burger.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And then, yeah, so it's just like doing things like that. In Japan, you're getting a matcha McFlurry. That's not quite as exciting anymore. But yeah, just trying all the different, because I think it's really whatever's on their McDonald's menu, right, is like their quintessential flavors that everyone loves. So I think then going there and then seeing how that's expressed across the culture and maybe higher end restaurants or dive bars and things like that, I always think I always say to people, go to McDonald's when you first get somewhere.
That's awesome. I love that. That's
Yeah.
a great tip. Mandy, what's next for you?
Great question. I am definitely still out. I actually have a string of events coming up the end of August into September. So you can find all those events at howtotastebook.com. I'm still preaching the mission of getting people to taste and learn to taste and love their senses, but I'm also trying to translate the message into new ways. So hopefully a little bit more of TV coming on. I've had some fun stuff with History Channel and just different news stations. So we're trying to package it in a way that's a little more visual. Could just be a video series, but it's definitely staying on mission. I'm not going to go report a brand new book and write something about something totally different, at least not yet. So definitely sticking with taste and getting people to appreciate what they eat and drink more.
Mandy, it's been wonderful to talk to you. We're going to have links to your book, How to Taste, in the bio. Also, we're going to have links to your blog as well. So, Mandy, thank you for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed getting a chance to talk to you.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much for having me.
That was my conversation with Mandy Naglich, a true expert in the world of food and beverage. Her passion for sharing knowledge and helping others discover the joy of tasting is truly inspiring. If you're interested in learning more about Mandy and her work, be sure to check out her book, How to Taste, A Guide to Discovering Flavor and Savoring Life. We have a link to that in the bio. You can also find her on various platforms sharing her expertise. We have a link for her blog and her Instagram account in the bio as well. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Well Seasoned Librarian. Until next time, I'll see you in the library.